Just when you thought you couldn't get enough of Food Girls, they're back, and with a sequel too. Say hello to Food Girls 2 Civil War. At the moment it's only available on PC, but I wouldn't be surprised if a Switch port pops up given how the first game got one. The game is a Taiwanese visual novel and has Japanese voices as well as text in Chinese, Japanese and English. The game flew under my radar as when I covered the first game, as I mentioned in its review, I didn't even realise it had come out on PC, let alone actually existed. To my surprise, I had also discovered that the game got a sequel that had only been released about 6 months later. So I figured I'd cover that too, since the first game was still fairly fresh in my mind. The game does contain spoilers for Food Girls, and it is recommended that you play that game first to truly enjoy references that this game makes. Food Girls 2 Civil War takes place shortly after the events of Food Girls, with you reprising your role as the professional consultant from the consulting company. I'm never going to get sick of that. A new restaurant has opened run by the sisters Hong, Kumi in Japanese, and Ching, Kyomi in Japanese, specialising in beef noodles. Again, like the previous game, I'll go by the names the characters are given in this game as opposed to their Japanese names. The start of the game has Yu, long hair, who runs the Steamed Dumplings restaurant as well as getting a pretty neat visual upgrade over her Food Girls appearance, and Coco, who runs the Mango Ice Shop, visiting the sisters in order to say hi. As beef noodles and steamed dumplings are mains, Longhair isn't too pleased about having to compete with the sisters and is a little upset that they didn't even greet the other folks on the food street. This comes to a head when she becomes even angrier about the sisters, or well, Hong's stuck-up attitude about how successful they are, and even the fact that their restaurant has received a Michelin star, of course a play on the Michelin star, and starts a fight with her. Coco tries to break it up, but Hong's attitude brings her into the fight, and ultimately they decide to hold a contest. Longhair and Coco against the Beef Noodle Sisters, with the loser having to leave the food street. As you return to your office, you're assigned a new consultancy job by your company, with the clients being the sisters at the Beef Noodle restaurant, and you're now torn between helping the friends you made in Food Girls, or betraying them to help the Beef Noodle Sisters. The game does lock you into Longhair and Coco's team first, and you have approximately 2 months to beat the other team, with the difficulty now affecting how much of a challenge your opponent is instead of your starting capital. But has this game learnt from its predecessor? And more importantly, is the game any good? Find out in The Good. The sequel still retains the management system of the previous game, though with some changes that I liked. You still have 4 actions you can perform a day, and that can be spent on increasing the popularity or quality of a girl's shop, or getting close to them through conversation. At the start of each game week, you get to pick something for you to focus on. You can pick a focus on popularity or quality to increase the amount of points from training in those aspects, or you can invest it in claw machines for income, branded products for popularity, or open up a bar to learn more about your opponents. You can choose to play fair, or you can choose to sabotage your opponents at the cost of your reputation. To mix things up a bit, as the game is now about a competition as opposed to trying to save the food street, the random events you can encounter have been adjusted accordingly. There are now events that can affect your performance which you can avoid if you purchase the right items, such as an updated air conditioner for summer days, or a security camera if there are thefts around, for example. These events can really catch you off guard if they happen to take place towards the start of the game where you have to be more careful with money. You also have random events where you can meet up with the 3 girls from the first game who can either help or hinder your efforts to better Longhair or Coco's stores. In the Beef Noodle Sisters case, they have a different set of random events since you're up against the food street, so you won't receive any support from the girls in the previous game. The girls each have a stamina bar as well, so you can't adopt the strategy of always investing in just one of them, though talking to the girls to get close to them does not use up stamina. Some stamina is restored each day, and you can have random events which can reduce stamina or the amount of actions you have in a day, so you have to be very careful about how you approach each event. This improvement over the original's management system was a very welcome addition, and I had a lot more fun with it. In terms of the story, I found it more interesting and engaging than the first game. There are problems that present themselves right from the get-go when you take a side, and depending on how you go in the game, you can resolve these issues or not. Longhair tries to take care of everything by herself, and you wonder why she isn't prepared to hire anyone, and Coco is trying to find some people from an old photo. Whereas on the other side, you'll find that Hong is very protective of Ching. Very, very protective of Ching. As you raise your friendship levels with the girls, you can unlock the next part of the story, though you have to balance this out with winning the competition too. I did get invested with the story and wanted to know what happened next, which is a lot more than the passable verdict I gave for the first game. The stats of each girl and how they grow in the game also tends to reflect the story as well. Longhair and Coco complement one another in terms of popularity and quality, with Longhair having higher quality and Coco having higher popularity, but average points in the other. In the Beef Noodle Sisters case, Hong starts with well above average points but gains less in quality, whereas Ching starts with low stats but gains a lot more points than Hong through training. The game still uses live 2D models and they look as good as ever, but the game isn't without its flaws, so let's explore those in the bad. The issues I had with the previous game are still mostly there. The live 2D models still clash with the static characters, and of course, the less detailed people in the background return, though I do see a slight improvement. Despite the girls from the previous game returning, it's now their turn not to get any voices, except for Bubbles. While they gave Longer and Coco voices, they took them away from Aurora and Lulu. Guess it must have been a budgeting thing. Nonetheless, you have 2 new supporting characters who don't have live 2D models, and aren't voiced in the game despite being on main artwork. It did give me the impression that perhaps there was a third team available and maybe I just had to unlock them, but this did not appear to be the case. The game is a little sloppier with the English translation, and it was to a point where it started to bother me. These translation issues are more evident when you work together with the Beef Noodle sisters, as when you train them the game will tell you that Longer and Coco stats have gone up as opposed to Hong and Ching's. One of the random events asks you which of the 2 sisters you want to spend some time with, and when you click on Hong for example, you'll find that Ching's friendship level went up. They have the sisters around the wrong way. The game does still suffer from untranslated parts, but like the first game it wasn't enough to ruin anything as it wasn't crucial information that was untranslated. Other than that, I have nothing else to complain about here, so it's about time I give the opinion. Food Girls 2 Civil War I feel is a much better game than the original in just about every way. The gameplay has been refined and the story was much more engaging to me, but the issues I had with the original game remained, and the English translation suffered more. In order to fully appreciate the game, you are best to play the first game as this takes place after it, and like I said with the first game, if you enjoy visual novels with gameplay, then this one is worth picking up. If you haven't figured it out already, Lulu keeps her altered appearance, though she doesn't appear in the game very much, so I never really saw it as a huge issue. So with that, it's time for my rating. I would give Food Girls 2 Civil War some prawn hargol out of 10. Thanks for watching and stay tuned for the next Infinite Backlog review. If you enjoyed today's review, feel free to check out some of our other videos and subscribe for more. You can also follow us on Twitter, Instagram and our Facebook page. Once again, thank you for watching.